All right. We are back. We, wow. Now of all time. Wow. Excuse me.
Oh, Crystal, I hope you can take over.
We are back. Excuse me. It is August 19th, 2024. The year feels like it has just blown by. The 23-24 school year brought a lot, and the 24-25 one promises to bring just as much more, and we have so much to get into today. So we're excited. But before we do, just tell you this is the HEF podcast, the Home Education Foundation. Foundation started by Brenda Dickinson back in the 90s as she helped create the home education freedoms that we have and love today. And 40 years later, we're all continuing this work to fight for parents' rights to educate their children as they see fit, without the involvement of organizations or institutions to get in the mix and force their hands in any particular way. So that's what we're here for, and that's what we talk about. And what makes it possible is the sponsors, especially our top sponsors, and our families. We love, and our vendors. I can't not mention anybody, but let's start with our top sponsors. Thank you, Arete, for being our title sponsor, and FPEA. You've been with us since we started the podcast as one of the sponsors, as one of the top sponsors, excuse me, and we love that you're here. Fisher Precious Metals, also with us this year, and we've got room for more. We definitely love seeing those families. Every time I see like a little donation come in from a family, it really does mean the world to me, because I know that there's some little person out there holding up a banner saying "Fight for me," and I just appreciate that. And yes, we're here for you. So, be that as it is, let's go. Here we are. A good day, rather, Brenda and Crystal.
We're here.
Yes.
What are we going to talk
about? It's been a weekend, man.
It has been quite a weekend. Crystal watches the Facebook groups because I work in social media as my other job, and I can only handle so much of it. So she spends
and
time.
I can't handle any of it. So God bless her. I am so happy to have her there.
Yes, absolutely. So she spends a lot of her time combing through comments and watching issues that arise and keeping tabs on things that are trending and what some of those issues are. And then, we talk about some of those things. Some of them make it here. Some of them just get dealt with behind the scenes. But we do have some we'd like to kind of bring to awareness today and talk about. I think before we get in, we'll say happy back to school. I think a lot of, I know the public school districts are headed back. They're all back in the swing, and many of the home education families kind of find their annual dates in alignment here. It's not what's the word?
Required.
Compulsory. Yeah, it's not required that it be, but it just kind of tends to be a good fit for some. So many of you are starting your home education journeys back right now, and power to you. If you're excited about what you're doing, take a moment and find the Tell Your Story project on our website and tell us what home education looks like for you this year, what your plans are, and the impact that you hope it'll have. We'd love to capture a little video of you to send us and kind of tell us what that is for you. So that'd be great. Aside from that, we do have some, I think, I don't want to say exciting issues because they're exciting. They're volatile, but it's not the kind of exciting.
Not in a good way, yeah.
No, this is not like the baking soda volcano kind of way where it's a good excitement. This is just a bunch of energy being spent on things that we could all kind of spend energy elsewhere. So, Brenda,
Are we heading toward the issues that are coming up with PEP?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me say something before we get there.
Okay, good.
First of all, while HEF and HEF Connect are working really hard with parents to get their problems and their issues worked out, it's really not our issue. because we are not the scholarship funding organization. We are not the
True.
school district, and we're
True.
not the DOE. Fortunately, we have
Also true.
very good relationships with all three. And so when parents run into problems and they can't get to somebody with any authority in those other organizations, they call us and we go to bat for those parents.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do. We want to help parents, regardless
Absolutely.
of what form of education they choose for their child. And we are currently collecting the issues that are arising with PEP parents so that when the legislature reconvenes in November, we will have a list of things that we think need to be changed in the law to make the process go smoother. I think part of the problem is that the school districts are a bit out of the loop. They're trying to figure it out on their own with
Yeah.
very little direction. And I think we need to be more specific in statute about what exactly their roles are, exactly how they're supposed to handle these issues that come up.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to do as much as we can with one-on-one contacts, but sometimes it really takes a change of statutes to make it work smoothly. And so while you think we may only go 2 months out of the year for lobbying, it actually occurs year round and more frequently than we would like for it to be, because that means people have problems, right?
Year round. Yeah. It surprised me how many issues. I think, okay, cool. Well, now the districts will kind of spread the word and this won't be a problem anymore. But that's not, it's constant everywhere across the state. And sometimes it impacts like a bunch of people at once, and then it just blows us up. So maybe we should start with the compliment sandwich. There are things the districts do that are good, things that need improvement, and then on something good. I will say that on the call with the districts, there were a couple of districts that were gung-ho about protecting the children's rights. That, they kind of said to the other districts, there's 2 brave districts that spoke up and said to all the other 65 districts, like, you need to get it together and figure it out, because this is required by law. And I was so blown away to hear them say that so directly and so pointedly. But it was refreshing, though. It was very refreshing. And
I don't think most of the districts are anti-homeschool or anti-PEP. They're not attorneys. They weren't involved in the legislation. They don't know how the SFOs work. They're so busy doing their job with home education families. And then when they don't have a code for PEP, they don't know what to do with that child who's in the ages of compulsory attendance. What do we do with those kids? Because there's not a code. So that's one of the things we've been harping on since our call in the summer, that the state needs to create a code that's uniform so that every district knows what to do with a PEP student. It seems pretty simple, but our people that are dealing with students that have withdrawn from either home education or withdrawn from public schools that are in the system, they don't know what to do with them, and then they get reported as truant.
Yeah, or
I think now. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, because they didn't have that standardized code, it was sort of like a free-for-all for each district, kind of figuring out how they wanted to mark the kids. I've even had parents tell me that their county told them they were marking them as private school. So it's just been all over the place with how the counties were deciding to handle it.
Yeah.
Which has caused a lot of issues, as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah. And I think now they have a code. The last that I saw, they had a code and they were trying to get it passed out. But I think some of the stuff that we're finding now are dealing with issues where this child has been truant for a year. And who knew? Who even told them? They go to renew or change something on their license and they're told, oh, we can't change this on his license. He's truant. And so his license is suspended. Well, why was he ever marked truant? Like what
Yeah.
what process led to that?
To clarify, these are families who were PEP all last year. They just weren't marked as such in the county system.
So that's the problem. Last year they had no code and they didn't know what to do with the students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. In fact, Clive is saying, "Preach, Brenda. You're spot on and you're on fire today." So you're nailing it.
Okay. But can Crystal get a little closer to her mic? Because I'm having a little trouble hearing
I can
her.
move it. Is that better?
She's so sweet.
She's
and
quiet.
Spoken.
She's so quiet. Yeah. Sometimes we do these practices at home where I just get her to yell at me so I can test the limits of her volume. I'm kidding. And somebody's going to clip that and the wrong thing will get spread on the internet or something. We don't do that. But we could. So the issues, I think some of them, the ones that we're dealing with, we're not, okay, so I also want to add to what you were saying that the issues that we run into keep pulling us back in. There are other things on the horizon that we're trying to work on that are, in fact, very exciting for the state of Florida, like very, very exciting opportunities, especially in post-secondary world. So where your kids go after high school and the paths that they have and bringing those in and giving them exposure in the home education community so that your children can find them and get them to them easily. There's a lot of search engines and search results, and you see what Google's ending up in the news and this, and we're not trying to be a search engine or compete in that way, but we work collectively with home educators across Florida, and we have a community here, and we want to pull access to opportunities into that community so that you can be aware of them. Some of them are like, people scratch their heads and go, well, I don't want to send my kid to college, or he doesn't really even have an interest. He wants to do this or that. And basically he's got a 3D printer and he sits at home and now he's trying to build a business online. It's like, well, here are some cool opportunities that match that skill set that exist in Florida in machining, career and technical, industry, logistics and supply. And there's so many well-paying jobs that could use someone with a skill set like that if they're interested and passionate about it and don't even necessarily require you to go to college to get into them. So stuff like that is on the horizon there. We're working on those things too and excited to talk about them. But I think like every time we do one of these calls, we end up having to put out fires. And it's like, okay, well, let's stomp on that PEP fire again. and get something
water on it.
Yeah. So specifically in this issue, I think one of the things, I think it's coming out of Palm Beach County and Duval County. And if you're a parent and you're in Palm Beach County or Duval County and you're being told this, we can look at the statutes today. In fact, I can pull them up if you want. And Crystal, why don't you roll through the problem and lay it out while I pull up the statutes and then we can go into answering them. Since you were the one fielding the Facebook.
Yeah. So there are two separate issues happening. One, what seems to have been happening in Palm Beach County is that students were just being shown as truant because they hadn't been marked in the system with a code for PEP. What's happening in Duval County is different. We've had reports of students who were PEP last year. They terminated home education, switched to PEP. And then this year, they were auto-enrolled in public school because the system was not showing them in any attendance track since they had terminated home education last year. And some of the parents in Duval County have even said that the employees at their particular school refused to unenroll their child because they weren't funded for PEP yet. So until they could show proof of actual PEP funding, the school was telling them, you have to be either in a school or registered as home education with the county, and we will not unenroll your child from the public school until you can show proof of one of those. And so this is an issue. Obviously, it could become an issue for funding for those families for PEP this year, because when they go to do the cross checks, their kids are going to show enrolled in a public school. And it's also just an issue with the logistics of how PEP works and whether the school should be able to tell you that they won't unenroll your child when you go to unenroll them. So do you have the statutes? Or
I do. So we'll start with enrollment. So statute 1003, not 21, is where the the question of attendance lies for Florida. Remember that Florida is an attendance state, not an education state. So the requirement is that your child is in attendance. And to satisfy the attendance requirement, if you scroll down to the bottom, if you're on the website like I am, you scroll down to the bottom. Is it? Wait, where's it at? School.
It's not in the very bottom.
What is it? 3.1 definitions. Okay. Sorry. It's 1003.01 under the definitions. So at the bottom under 16, the regular school attendance means the actual attendance of the student. And they can meet the requirements in these ways. So a public school, a parochial or religious school, a private school, a home education program, a private tutoring program, or a personalized education program that meets the requirements of 1002.395. That's where the statutes are for the FTC PEP. But if you look over at 1002.01, so this is the definition, where definitions lie for what these programs are. So this defines what a private school is, what home education programs are, and what the personalized education program is. The personalized education program means a sequentially progressive instruction of a student directed by his or her parent to satisfy the attendance requirements that we just read, while registered with an eligible nonprofit funding organization, or probably nonprofit scholarship funding organization, pursuant to 1002.395. So the requirement isn't that the child be funded. The requirement is that the child be registered. And that's very important, because this is actually an enrollment. This is unlike the other scholarship paths, right? So you have FESEO, you have FESUA, you have FTCEO. You have different scholarships available through the statutes. This particular one is unique in that it is also an attendance track, a legal way of satisfying your attendance. And so that, I think that there's just early on, there's just a lot of misunderstandings or a lot of lack of information. I mean, who's nerding out and reading this stuff like Brenda and I do? I don't really know. I know that we are, because we dive into the weeds on it, and the words to us matter. But the people who are trying to get through their day in the districts, and they're like, well, I know that I have to put something in that field box. There's a string of letters. I just don't know what the letters are, and I need to do my job, and I need to do it well because I like getting paid. They're not necessarily in the statutes to understand all of this, or nor care. And so it might take the parent knowing this.
And they don't feel like they have the authority to make the final decision because they're not attorneys, and they usually bump that up to the attorneys to interpret, or wait for DOE to tell them what to do.
Right. So, so your pushback can include this information. Make sure that you kind of bring your knowing how to handle these conversations, I think, is very important. Not that you also need to be a lawyer, but we've kind of pointed to you where they are and what the things are that are written, so that you can just speak intelligently about what your rights are, and the ones that are protected, how they're laid out. So,
okay, so let me add something here.
Yes.
That is absolutely true. However, what they also need to have, and we can look that up, and I don't know exactly where it is in 1002.395.
Okay.
But the funding doesn't come down until after September 15th, which is when the DOE gets the money, or when the scholarship funding organizations release the money to parents. And so they can't get the money, even though they have to go ahead and enroll, because if they're enrolled in a public school, then DOE doesn't clear them to get the funding. So
Correct.
It's a bit of a conundrum as to when the parent is supposed to enroll their child, especially if they're in a home education program. We've said all along, until you get the letter that says you're enrolled or you've been accepted, you get the scholarship, that should be your letter to show to the districts that you are registered in the PEP program for attendance. the funding shouldn't be an issue, but the districts don't know when the funding drops. And
Right.
so you need to show the letter to the district that says, but my funding doesn't come until, is it after September 15th?
Well, Jason and I looked back at the statutes the other day, and I think they updated some of those dates when they did HB 1403. Was that what it was?
Right.
But for PEP, we couldn't actually find a specific date in the statute for the funding drop, but Step Up is telling parents.
For the parents.
Yeah, for the parents. Step Up
Yeah.
is telling parents that renewal should be awarded by mid-August, and new parents should be awarded by mid-September. So if that's the timeline Step Up is going on for funding parents,
No,
then
that's just saying you're awarded. You actually have a scholarship, and then there's a gap between when that money is put into that child's account.
well, those are the dates Step Up is giving families for when they're actually going to put funds into the parents' accounts. But then the issue we're running into is that parents will not even get funded if their kid is enrolled in a public school or home education in the meantime. So
Right.
this determination of funding as the attendance qualifier doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can't, the reason we've told people to terminate their home education program or unenroll when they receive the award letter is because they can't be funded if they're in more than one attendance track. So the whole logistics for how the districts are communicating with parents on this is really confusing and doesn't make a lot of sense. And I have parents who were on Facebook really concerned and kind of even arguing with me because their districts had told them, no, I'm truant until I'm funded unless I enroll in something else. And that's just not it. Logistically, it doesn't work for that to be how they're handling it.
Right. So really that letter, the award letter, should be the proof to the district that the child is registered in a PEP program.
Yeah.
When the funding comes is whenever the funding comes.
Right.
But,
like last year, the funding got delayed and we didn't have funds until like October, November. That didn't mean that my child was truant until October, November. But I was just going to say, there actually is an award ID if you're with Step Up. I don't know for AAA, but they created a document that you can download and print that has your child's award ID number and says the year that you've been awarded so that you have something to show to your district or wherever. Because the award is supposed to be the determining factor for you being registered.
Yeah, just being registered.
With the SFO.
Yeah, and then obviously that creates like the kind of window space for the SFOs to, I guess it's balls in their court as to how they're going to consider you registered, since that's the language that's using. Like it really kind of is determined by them. And that's one of the conversations that we've been having with Step Up is, how are you guys, understanding that this is a different scholarship than the other scholarships. You can use similar language to the other scholarships, but this one is unique, and that it is also an attendance track, unlike the other scholarships. So you do need to clarify some of the language that you're with. So we're working with them to kind of get clarity from them as well on it, so that hopefully a lot of this gets cleaned up in the aftermath. But it is causing parents problems. Turned a child into a criminal, right? Like we don't want someone driving without a license, breaking the law. This is not something that we needed, but
it's really confusing for parents because Brenda, like you were saying, there's a date that the funds are actually released to the SFOs, and then there are different dates that the SFO actually gives funds to the parents. And then there's the award process, and the school districts are telling them one thing. And so it's creating so much confusion for parents.
And once they're awarded, then or just prior to the award, the DOE has to run those names through the public school system. They have to make sure they're not enrolled in a private school or a home education program before the funds are released. So
We got work to do.
Honestly, they can't do as if I remember correctly, they can't run the names of the students awarded PEP through the school district register for home education or public school until school starts and the kids are registered.
Yeah. And this is another question or concern that I was getting from parents. There were people asking like, well, I didn't want to tell the district why I was terminating home education. So I didn't tell them I was doing PEP. That's not the situation with these scenarios we were discussing, but that is something other parents have told me. So it's important to realize that the superintendent is responsible for ensuring that all the students in his district are in some attendance track. And so if you're terminating home education, please tell them you're switching to PEP so they can mark you correctly in the system for a couple of reasons. One, so you don't run into truancy issues, but two, PEP students are afforded the same flexibility and opportunities in statute as home education. So if at any point you want to go and take extracurriculars with the district or anything like that, you're going to run into issues if they haven't marked you in the system correctly, which is the same issue why a school district shouldn't be telling parents that they're marking them as a private school student. That's going to create issues for them for funding purposes and for perhaps other things in the future. So just a lot needs to be clarified, I guess, with the confusion that parents are getting from what their districts are telling them.
So we've got a lot of comments to catch up on. Let me help me still filter through these. Clive is on fire today. He does have a question that says, can you explain the inconsistency with step up of the PEP purchasing guide? For example, cell phone internet use sometimes is approved and sometimes denied. Why? No, we can't explain that. There's a lot about the purchasing guide that personally I just can't explain. There are some key things that I've even spoken with Step Up for Students about, and I don't necessarily even think that we or they perhaps see eye to eye on some of these, the nuances of some of these issues, and the situations it creates. I will say this: I do know how they've made the purchasing guide. I understand their core approach. And that is to they've been working with UCF, who is responsible for creating the purchasing guide for UA. And as a business, it's in their best interest to kind of keep things as uniform across the board as they can, which makes it easier for their processors to understand the requirements of each of the programs, the more similar that they are. And so as a result, they've tried to take the guidelines and statutes available for PEP and the ones for UA and interpret them as closely mirroring each other as possible so that they can keep their business model fluid. And that I think that's a smart approach. There's a couple of key issues where they're probably going to run into some issues. And there'll be some things that look inconsistent because you'll be like, well, why this, but not that? And that I don't know that I have a hard explanation for that. It's not like there's a very, very tight definition in statute for them to follow. 90% of the purchasing guide in and of itself fits under, quote, instructional materials, which to my brain doesn't make sense at all. But that's where a lot of the, kind of liberties are taken with how things are defined. A bookshelf, is it instructional materials? Is it furniture? Is it, was it an exercise bike? Is it furniture, PEP equipment, or instructional materials? And if it has an electronic component where it plugs in and monitors your heart rate, is that a digital device, or is it? There's a lot of things that, it's just that's their job, and they make those decisions, and give them your feedback. Let them know when things are helpful too, because I know they get a lot of complaints that like, oh, I wanted this and I can't get that. Why? But it's also good to let them know when they're on the right track so that they can continue. Because I do also know that they talk with the legislators behind the scenes as well, and they let them know what parents are looking for and what what they're wanting and what they need, what they come and say, hey, there's this educational benefit for them, and here's why they need it. And this parent makes a really good argument for that. And, so give them your feedback and speak with them on what you think you need, and, let it ride. See where they take it. Another parent, I didn't see any other questions from Clive. He looked like he was just commenting. Crystal, did you?
He did ask a question further down, but it came
Okay.
after the other parent's question, so I guess we can hit hers
Okay.
first.
Okay. Brenda, did you have anything to add to that?
I did, but I forgot.
I'm sorry.
No. I know what I was going to say is,
Go on.
we feel like there should be 2 separate purchasing guides, one for UA and one for PEP, and we are trying.
And a third one for EO because
Yeah.
that's separate from, they're both FTC, but that's different as well. Sorry.
And we have some agreement from Step Up that maybe that's a good idea, but as Jason said, it doesn't make the best sense from a business standpoint. So we are in discussions with them about that. Whether we will win those points or not is to be seen.
Yes. Nikki Bennett says, are all homeschool / virtual questions accepted here? First timer here. Nikki, thank you for being with us. Yes, questions are here to be answered. It looks like you also asked, are laptops provided for virtual schooling? I did type to you and ask you to clarify. Let me look down and see. So it's all web-based instruction, which is accessible via laptop or iPad. I'm kind of lost here on this. Yes, separate ones, please. So the question is, I think needs clarity. Are you talking about, do parents provide the laptops? Are you saying, do the school districts provide laptops for the home education students? Does FLVS provide laptops whenever you sign up with them? Or is it a scholarship that provides laptops? I'm not sure I understand the whom provided by whom part of the question to answer it accurately. So if you could maybe elaborate on.
I can give some thoughts while she's being more specific.
Yeah.
The scholarship cannot be used to be enrolled in full-time FLVS. It has to be in the Flex program. It is my understanding that if a parent fits the qualifications for low income, then a digital device would be provided for those students in the full-time program. They do not provide them for Flex students. So PEP does not allow the parent to purchase a digital device, which doesn't make sense if they're going to allow them to take virtual classes. So that's another point that we are lobbying for in the upcoming year. And especially if they're going to have one consistent guide for everything, then the legislature needs to change it so that UA students they already get digital devices, but PEP students do not get digital devices. So if it's going to be one purchasing guide, then it should be the same for both. So there's a lot of inconsistencies that we're aware of, but no, the district doesn't provide laptops for home education students, and therefore they're not going to provide them for PEP students at this time.
I will say, John Kirtley last year, 2023 in December, when he was in front of the committee that came together in December to hear some urgent issues about the UA scholarship and to be kind of hit with some questions that the media were throwing out there. He made it clear that when they like to err on the side of empowering parents to serve their children with a better education. I think it's safe to say that SUFS, Step Up for Students, has a heart for providing what the parents' needs and what the students' needs are, and that digital devices is among those. The issue with the statutes is not that digital devices have been banned in PEP. It's simply that they have not been permitted. And so when you contact your legislators, be very clear that when you're speaking to them, like it's in the other scholarships and in the statutes, like let's also get it added to this one because parents who are exercising these virtual options need it. And I think you can make a good case for that.
And let me say, first of all, you didn't explain who John Kirtley is. I think he's the chairman of the board for Step Up for Students.
Right.
He if he's not chairman of the board at the current time, which I still think he is, he at least started the organization and was one of the big mover and shakers of the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship program that's in statute now. So he's a very powerful voice on behalf of parents who are taking the scholarships.
Yeah, and he's an advocate for, as Jason said, as much freedom as possible for the parents to use the funds in the way that works best for their children. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Grace, sorry, I was just going to say, Grace Kieran commented, "I'm sorry I'm jumping in late. Can you guys touch on any plans you have and how we can help to try to get digital devices added for PEP?" I think you jumped in actually at the perfect time, Grace.
Yeah, literally. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that do you want me to answer it or Crystal?
Whoever wants to.
Okay. Contacting your legislators is important to let them know what your needs are. I think probably one of the best ways to do it, it'll be weird if we script something for you, hand it out to everyone in the state, and then they're all getting hit with the exact same copy paste message. It'll just sound like one of those chain letters that you just put on ignore. We all hate those. We hate the robo texts and all that stuff too. So we don't want it to appear that way, but I could give you a formula for it. And that would be, here's what we plan. Here's why we can't. This is the impact we would like to provide. Please add digital devices. So if you can take those kind of key points and then just kind of write your own heartfelt reason as to why and lay out the educational benefit, you make a great case for it. You're the parents. And the scholarships are there to empower you, to help provide for your child, educate things that are of educational benefit. There's a very strong case in this day and age at this time. There's a very strong case for why digital devices need to be included. Well,
let me ask Crystal, can we put that in the form like those 4 issues or points that Jason just made?
Sure.
We're not going to tell them what to say. We're just going to take what area they should comment on.
I think we actually have a post from last year because, again, for those of us who weren't following last year, this was on our radar as an issue to try to address last year, but then we ended up having to divert most of our efforts to preventing the instructional materials
limitations.
Yeah. But I can try to find it because I think I had a post that basically was like tips for writing to your legislator about these issues. And again, I see that Clive said a script is the way to go, but I want to encourage parents to be genuine and personal.
Mm-hmm.
So a loose script that we can provide you that are kind of just like, here are the bullet points, but please personalize it because you want the legislators to know that it's heartfelt. And that it's not
your child.
Yeah, how it specifically affects your child. Yeah.
Because they're representing you. Yeah. Nikki,
to their office and meeting with staff before they get really busy, like now is a good idea.
Yeah, I know you might be busy because school is starting, but now is actually a great time to catch them.
Yeah.
FLVS Flex is what Nikki says she has. FLVS Flex student. Wasn't sure if I purchased a laptop for my son, if all instruction is web-based or is software needed. Sorry, such a newbie. I'm not as familiar with FLVS Flex and the way that the programming and all of it works. It does not, to me, I haven't heard of a need for a software, but I'm not certain how it works.
I think when you enroll in their classes, you get their software. I'm pretty sure that's
okay.
And I just want to pause on this because she said she's a beginning newbie. I don't know if you are PEP or home education doing flex, so I just want to pause for a second and explain what we've been talking about with the scholarship and the digital devices not being included. That's all in reference to the PEP scholarship. If you're home education with the county and not PEP, um, then you're doing flex directly through your home education program, and it would be what we were just talking about is in reference to the scholarship. So I just don't want her to be confused. Um, but yeah, if you're FLVS Flex with the county, and you purchased a laptop for your son, I think just from what I've heard, like Brenda said, it'll either come with the software or it's web based, because I've known families who have done it and I've never heard any of them mention having to purchase something separate in order to run that on their systems.
Well, there's another nuance here, is that there are two different programs. You can enroll directly with flvs.net, or many of the counties have basically franchises and they run them through the county program. So if you are doing it through the county with FLVS Flex, you might get a computer. But I don't think, unless something has changed in the recent years, I don't think Flex students, regardless of how they're enrolled, FLVS or PEP, get a laptop. If they're with the county might provide that because they have money that they're getting because the student is enrolled in that class, however many they take. They're enrolled in the public school class and they can draw down money for that student. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Clive asked a question and it made me realize maybe I misspoke. So I want to go and touch it. But he says, who are the contacts on the UCF policy team creating the PEP purchasing guide? UCF is not creating the PEP purchasing guide. Let me state that clearly. UCF is working on the UA scholarships purchasing guide. Also, I noticed that there's a couple of times up here where you reference PEP UA. Let me also kind of clarify that the statutes and the correct way to talk about the scholarships is there's the Florida Empowerment Scholarship for students. Is it family? Family Empowerment Scholarship, sorry. For students with unique abilities. So that's FESUA. And then there's the Equal Opportunity one, which is FESEO. There's a lot of acronyms. It's really easy to get mixed up. But then there's a separate scholarship.
And wait a minute.
Statute.
Let's tell them about the funding while you're here.
Okay.
Those two are FESUA and EO because that funding comes directly through the state education budget. Mm-hmm. Okay, now go forward.
Yeah. And then there's the FTC. That's the Florida Tax Credit. Not Family Tax Credit, right? I got that right.
Yeah.
Florida Tax Credit. And that's the Florida Tax Credit. The scholarship money arrives differently. And there's two scholarships that come out of that as well. There's an EO scholarship that comes out of that. And there's the PEP scholarship that comes out of that. And the Florida Tax Credit is tax incentives that are given to companies to donate directly into a 501c3 that will then give that money directly to the parents for their scholarshiping. So it's there's two different paths of scholarshiping in statute. PEP lies in the FTC category. UA is the other scholarship category. And so that's one of the other reasons why the laws that kind of deal with the purchasing guides and how they play out and why they're different are different because they're actually in different parts of statute. So it kind of creates the differences. And then from a business model standpoint, Step Up for Students wants things to be the same because that makes their job easier. If everything was the same all the way down through and through, it'd be a whole lot easier, but they're not. So let me catch up on comments.
I just went back and looked at the forum. I had a post in regards to HB 1403 and the instructional materials restriction. with some tips for contacting representatives and kind of like a bullet point template. So I think I can create one today for digital devices for those of you who are wanting to reach out. It just has some tips for how to how to structure your email and the types of concerns that, you know, the types of things to address. But again, it'll be a loose template because we want you to personalize it for how it actually affects your family.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of comments to keep going back. There's a little side conversation happening, and I'm trying to keep an eye on it in case a question pops up that we need to answer. But as of right now, it's not. So going back to the kind of issue, because we need to wrap things up. Brenda and I have a call that we absolutely have to be on at 1:00, and I don't want to be late for it. There was another conversation I totally wanted to get into. I just don't think we have the time for.
Well, I want to get into what you started off with about the exciting things that are happening.
Okay. We have enough time to do that and wrap up. So why don't you
exciting, right?
you do that?
Exciting.
So I've been traveling and I haven't been on all the calls lately, but in my travels, I have had the opportunity to meet with several different people in the IT world. And we're planting ideas and trying to create opportunities for training programs in the internet technology area and cybersecurity world, as well as the opportunities, hopefully within the next year, for students who qualify and want to do an internship program, which may lead to jobs in the future. So I'm pretty excited about that. Jason and I have been talking about ways to redesign that portion of our website because that is part of our mission.
Yes.
And it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Where do you start?
Yes.
You don't have a lot of information to put up, but you got to have the information up to be able to attract industry.
Right.
So we're not developed well enough at this point, but we're working on that. And right now, if you go to opportunities on the website, there's a link to what we did with AmSkills. And that program, we would like to flesh out and highlight more than just our one day that we did with AmSkill, because it is a round the year program that students that are interested in any of the skills that lead to industry certifications in manufacturing can start at just about any part of the year. And it's a short course that leads to like 3 basic industry certifications. And we know of one student who did this recently, and when he passed his exams on Friday, was immediately given 5 opportunities to go to different companies to interview for a job. Those jobs are high skill, high wage jobs. We're not focusing on trades. I know Micro does a great job with trades. The state colleges offer training for plumbing, electrical, auto mechanics, you name it, that's in a trade. And many of them, maybe not in your area, but in another area of the state, offer training in trades. We don't want to duplicate what's already out there. We want to find pathways for high skill, high wage jobs that currently are out there, but nobody knows about them. And so that's what AmSkills is. It's a training program that offer kids opportunities. So the next area that we're trying to develop is with internet skills. And I mean, that leads to a whole bunch of stuff, like the company we're talking to right now. They're considering a person to join them right now, one person, to be in the forensic area to learn to help them decide if somebody's system is hacked, what the hacking was, how it was done, and where the coding is messed up. And I'm talking about things I don't even know much about. But I understand they got to figure out how somebody hacked into their system. And so, the statistics that are out there are unbelievable. Like there's something like $230 million. I think it was millions and not billions of dollars that's being taken out of the United States every day because the hackers know exactly what they're doing. And we got to get smarter than the hackers so we can block those things. So it's something that's going to be ongoing, and we need really smart people to be able to help them figure that out. So that's one thing we're looking toward trying to build. And then I ran into somebody who's going to work with me on trying to flesh out the opportunities that are in the marine area where you could become a boat captain or build a boat, or
they were Florida. That makes perfect sense. Like,
so if your child's all interested in that, then the question that we have is, how do you find out about that stuff? And that's what we want to be, is the information hub. And along the way, we're hoping that people that are in those various industries will come alongside of us to advertise their opportunities and help us develop more people who can do the searching and bring that information to us.
Yes.
I think it's really exciting. It's a vision that I've had for a long time, because we've got college down. We know how to get our kids into college. We know how to get them scholarships. We know all that. We know that we can go to the state colleges and, the private trade schools. We can get those things. But what's all that in between stuff? And that's what we're searching out. And I ran into somebody else whose husband worked for a different type of company, and they're outsourcing to industry, but they need people in the United States, and there are not enough people to meet those needs with the skills that they need. So if you have any contacts or information, I know even in the airlines industries, you can do piloting. You can get training for fabricating airplanes and being airplane mechanics. And those are good paying jobs. But how do you identify and where are those opportunities?
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
I think it's really important that I remember, and I don't think it's the same exact way now, but I remember going on Monster and going on Indeed and going on these different job searching things after I got out of college. And it was like, get a job in marketing. And I was like, hey, that's kind of what I went to school for. Yay, And every single time I got an interview and showed up, there were 50 other people there. It wasn't a marketing job. It was some sort of scam, or it was some sort of like MLM, and they wanted to hear you pitch. And it was just like, oh my word. Like, how do you find the real opportunities? And I wish that there had been something like that. And like I said, we're not trying to be monster.com or Indeed or any of that. We're simply, the work that we do as lobbyists, the relationships and the reputation that we build allow us to leverage that. People come to us with, hey, I had this idea, or hey, we know about this. Did you know about that? As we're helping different people across the state. And so we just thought, man, if we could collect this information and make it available to our community so you guys could know and benefit. The challenge is it takes money, and to put the infrastructure together, to make the website edits, to put somebody's time on to chasing down those opportunities and collecting them and like stuff like that. So our supporters matter a lot to us. And so when you look at our website under opportunities, you're going to start to see some changes there little by little as we add to it. But also make sure that you thank the people who on our website are our supporters, and send them a message and tell them, even if you just click on their link and send them something through their contact form and says, hey, thank you for supporting HEF. It's really important to us. Like, we have on our recognition wall all of these companies all across Florida, that are our vendor tier donators. And that's why they're on the recognition wall. And if you want to be on the recognition wall, The support page has that information, and you can do that too. But take a look on our recognition wall and go recognize some of those. That would be really huge, benefiting the community, to tell them thank you for that as we continue to grow some of the opportunities. If you're a family and you haven't supported yet, I invite you, to take a moment. There's a lot that we do. There's a lot that we need. So if you can, you take a look at these subscription tiers and find one that fits you. And if $5 is still too much for you, by all means, take care of your family first. We do not want you to go in a hole. There are, last I checked, over 150,000 home education or homeschooling students in Florida. We don't need exactly every single one of them, right, to donate $5. So it's one of those things where if you can't, that's okay. But if you can, please do. Please take a moment and go ahead and take action on it and set one up so that we can continue to expand and work all the things that we're trying to do, because it's there's so much. There's so much.
And we can also use people that love to research.
Oh,
to
yeah,
go
man.
to Career Source and investigate the companies that are involved in Career Source and help us find these leads.
Yes.
You don't have to leave home to do that.
Correct.
So that would be great if we could identify the right industry people, and we could advertise on our site with those things. So you can be of help to us in that area while you're researching maybe for your own child, and give us the
100%.
leads that are out there that you know of.
Well, we're going to wrap up today. I want to say that we love that the world is our classroom, that we're not bound by four walls, and we hope that every parent gets to feel the joy of that roller coaster ride of taking your children and using what's accessible in that world to educate and empower them to be successful and formidable in life. And more power to you. We're here to advocate and help share accurate information and to try to connect with additional opportunities. Brenda, I don't have anything else to add today before we go to our top sponsors and close this out. Is there anything else you want to say?
Nope, we got to jump
Crystal?
on another call.
We do. Crystal?
No, just keep an eye out in the forum for that template that I mentioned. I'm going to be posting that later today.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for that. All right. Well, thank you again to Arete, FPEA, and Fisher Precious Metals for being our top sponsors. We need you. We love you. We thank you for being here with us. And to everyone else, we appreciate you guys being on the stream. We thank you for sharing it. We thank you for sharing the podcast to people you think it might be helpful for. We thank you for your questions. And we look forward to next week on Monday. Y'all have a great Monday. And until next Monday, we'll see y'all.